Alright, so in this tutorial we're going to be talking about just basic data structures. So specifically we're going to be talking about strings, integers, doubles, and kind of how to use them. This might seem pretty basic, so if this is something you're pretty familiar with, maybe you can move on to some of the more SwiftUI based things, some more Apple specific things. But to get started, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to start a new playground here. In Xcode you can actually create projects, that'll be an app, a final product, or you can create a playground, and that's how you can kind of learn different things, get started. So let's go ahead and do that first. So I'm going to create a blank playground, and I'm just going to create this on my desktop. And let's take a look at what we got here. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this first line, and let's talk about a string for a second. So a string is essentially just a set of characters that you might say are expressed as, or I guess you could say like they're expressed as individual letters, or they're processed as letters. So for example, I can create a new variable here. Let's call this variable person, and this person, I'll say that person is equal to Chris. Now when I put quotations around here, that means that I am declaring a string. So this is a person with a value of the word Chris. So, strings have different properties. For instance, each string is made up of, this string is made up of 5 characters. But the most crucial thing to understand is that you can actually create, strings that have numbers inside of them, where they're actually processed as letters. So what I mean by that is, if I say I have a variable called person, and person is Chris, and age is 55, well, if I asked you to add a word and a number together, you'd tell me you can't do it. But if I asked you to add person and age together, in this case, since they're both words, they're actually going to be put side by side. So I create a new variable called Chris age, or I'll call it Chris plus age, and that we'll set that equal to person plus age. And now if I click here and I run through this thing, it's going to go ahead and try to run this playground. We should get our results here on the right hand side. And you'll see that, in fact, it actually created Chris 55. So it processed this 55 as almost as two new letters. Now, in contrast, what I can do is I can create a new thing called, let's say, new age, or let's say age 2, and it's equal to 55. Now, do you notice how this one is yellow and this one is red? I mean, the colors can change depending on the theme, so don't focus on the colors, but the principle is that there's quotations here and there's no quotations here. So in this case, we have 55 as a number. So if I have age 3 is equal to 11, and now I say age 2 plus age 3, I'm creating a new variable named this, age 2 plus age 3. I'm saying it's equal to age 2 plus age 3. And now, instead of getting something like 5511, instead I'm going to get, if I hit run, I should get the literal addition of 55 and 11. So that's what happens when you add two numbers versus adding two words. So I can actually change this to say something entirely different. I can have it say, I could do something like, let's say city or state. I could say California. And now I could come here and say Chris plus state is equal to person plus state. And if I run through this, once more I should get a side-by-side addition of two words. Now that's just to reiterate the difference between adding two words together versus adding two numbers. Now when we talk about, whenever I just declare 55 like this, it's automatically assumed to be an integer, and it's not something with a decimal. So if I want something with a decimal, I can do something like this. I can say age 2. Well, let's do a new one, age 4. A decimal number is a double. That's what we call them, doubles, not integers. So if I create age 4 and I say it's a double and its value is 55, now its value is indeed 55. But if I come here and say age 2 is 55.2, let's run it and see if it thinks the age is 55.2. It already doesn't like the fact that I'm trying to add an integer and a double. But let's see what happens here. 55.2. Let's see. Let's tell it that this is explicitly going to be an integer. Let's run through and see what it tells us. It says can't convert value of type double to specified type integer. So what that means is the computer is saying, it looks like you gave me a decimal and you're telling me that this has to be an integer. So it's saying there's no way I can create an integer out of a decimal. So if we want something to be a decimal, we need to either put a decimal in it and it'll understand that that's decimal, or if we want a whole number to be considered as a decimal, we say that it is a double. So this is called type. This is giving it a type the minute we declare its existence. So now I can actually add a decimal to that. So age 5 could be, I'm actually not going to write that it's double. It's going to already know it by the fact that I put a decimal. Let's say 0.2. So now I can say, if I want to go ahead and see what that comes out to, I could say age 4. Let's just say new age is equal to age 4 plus age 5. What you'll find, if I run through it, is that it adds them together. It should return 55.2 right here. It's having a little bit of difficulty running through it, but I'll show that one more time. We can try instead. New age. Writing print is just another way of doing the same thing. So as you can see, here you go, 55.2. It's visible here. When you write print, that writes it here instead of writing it here. This is kind of just an as-you-go thing. So as you saw, 55.2. So we were able to manage 2 different decimals rather than just integers. So that'll be our introductory lesson on integers, doubles, and strings. And I think that'll be enough to kind of get us going through the basics of SwiftUI. If you have any questions, leave them below. Thanks.